7, 6, 5.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Warrington Borough Council's Cabinet on 14th of December 2020. My name is Councillor Russ Bowden. I'm leader of the council and I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. I can confirm that all Cabinet members present at the meeting have received the papers and the agenda and are fully informed for the meeting that's going to take place. In terms of the agenda, I think we've got one item of apologies, which is from Councillor Patel, who's unfortunately had a family bereavement, is unable to join us tonight. Moving on to the agenda, item 1, Code of Conduct, declarations of interest. Reminder to all members to declare any items of interest no later than when that item is discussed. I believe there are some declarations of interest to be made tonight. I'll start with Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm declaring an interest in agenda item number 6. It's a non-pecuniary interest, but I am chair of the bus company. I don't receive any payment for that, but just for purposes of transparency, I'm declaring that interest and I won't take any part in the item.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell, for that. Have we got any other declarations of interest, colleagues?
Likewise for me, Chair, for the same reason as Kathy. I'm on the bus board.
Okay, thank you for that.
And can I declare a non-pecuniary interest in agenda item 6 due to the fact that my husband is involved with the Livewire board? I'll withdraw from the meeting and not take part in the discussions.
Okay, thank you, councillors. I think even though none of you have pecuniary interests, I think in the interest of transparency, you've made the right decision to declare those interests, so thank you for that. Moving on to item 2 then, minutes of the last meeting. Held on the 9th of November. Are we happy to take those as a true record?
Happy with that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I will physically sign the minutes next time I'm in the town hall. Moving on to item 3 then, cabinet decisions forward plan. Colleagues should have had sight of the various items on the forward plan and changes. I think it's fairly self-explanatory and is provided here for noting by members. Moving on to item 4, it's always pleasing to see our policy committees making recommendations and referrals to Cabinet. And this is the first one we've had for a little while. It's a referral from the Support and the Local Economy Policy Committee regarding research on tenure of housing and urban greening policy. The current chair has joined us tonight, Councillor Steve Parish, and I'll ask him to present the referral.
Thank you, Russ. Briefly, it's 2 items that the committee discussed. One is the issue of tenure, and particularly in the town centre, there may be opportunity for it to apply to other areas, but the intention is to ask for a model for research to what sort of tenure there is, what sort of tenure we might want in the town centre particularly. And the other item is on urban greening. We're conscious that the town is having a lot of new build and there's not always green space provided with it, or even other ways of greening, green roofs, green walls. So those are the 2 items that we're asking the executive board, the cabinet, sorry, to take on.
Okay, thank you for that very brief presentation. I'll ask Councillor Jennings then to respond on behalf of the cabinet.
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, want to thank the members of the Economy Committee, Support the Local Economy Committee, for bringing these forward, and certainly want to stress the importance of these 2 pieces, particularly in the world that we live in now with COVID, and the fact that we need and have utilised green space more than ever throughout restrictions and throughout lockdown. And so really want to ensure that we do have that impetus for where we see town centre regeneration, we're finding the right balance. And I think certainly that the end result of the paper would be that That's noted within planning and certainly within our engagement with developers and with our own entities that we wish to bring forward. And then speaking more broadly to the housing demand research, we know that only 27% of 25 to 35-year-olds are becoming homeowners compared to 65% 20 years ago. So that is a huge drop of almost 40%, despite the fact that 51% of millennials do list home ownership as a priority, higher than both having kids and marriage. Only 9% say they've got no desire to own a home. So this is something that we should be exploring locally as to why that's happening, as well as other opportunities for housing models that can create routes to home ownership. So certainly thank the committee for bringing this forward, and certainly recommend this to Cabinet that we adopt this and take this action to understand the issues and look to see where we can create a fix or certainly support a solution to those issues.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Jennings. Colleagues, have we got any questions from members? I think on a virtual meeting, the easiest way is to go through everyone alphabetically and indicate whether you want to ask any kind of questions at this stage. So coming through members then, I'll start with Councillor Guthrie.
Yes, thank you. Can I just make a comment, really? It's great to see this report, and it's great to see it coming from the Policy Committee. And the project itself will be very useful in informing our future policy. It will be good to look at an update of the local housing needs assessment, which underpins the local plan. I look forward to seeing the outcomes and how we plan from there on. One of the key themes is that we may be at risk of over provision of 1 to 2 bedroom flats at the moment, which are out for rent, and we perhaps need to focus more on the sustainability of residential communities within the town centre and farther on. So one of the things that I'm sort of concerned about is about making sure we have quality within these properties and a wider range size of dwelling, including family accommodation as well. That will be contained, obviously, if it's in the town centre within high density development, but it could prove a way forward. And the greening of the town centre, from my point of view, in terms of climate change, is really welcome, because I think we need to include more green spaces in not just in the town centre, but in the wider community. But one of the things we do need to focus on is not just whether or not we green the town centre, but looking at the management costs of such areas going forward. But I welcome this report. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Come to Councillor Higgins.
Councillor Borden, nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Knowles.
Yeah, just to add, I think obviously this is all about having the right homes for the right people in the right places and attractive ones that people want to live in. I think one other aspect that we could have a look at, and it's sort of a little bit hot off the press still, is about leasehold reform and how that might impact. And it's I think only last week or the week before that one of the largest house builders, Borough, have done something about leasehold on flats, so they'll be building them with zero ground rent. There's also some changes in Help to Buy, and we need to make sure that it is actually feasible for people to be able to get onto the housing ladder by looking at how this will impact on properties that will be built in Warrington. We've already done quite a lot of work on issues around leasehold reform, but I can see that this will just extend that work, and it's about really understanding the nitty-gritty of how people can buy those homes that they really will get the benefit out of living in over the long term. That's from me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think everything that I was going to say has already been said, so I'll move things along. Just really welcome the report from supporting the local economy, and it's great to see a piece of work like this feeding up into council policy and us being able to work with that to improve the housing and the housing needs for people in the town.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
No questions from me, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Mundry.
No comment from me, Chair.
And Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jennings, do you want to come back on any of the points raised?
Only to thank other members for their contributions. There was nothing there that I disagree with. In fact, absolutely agree with everything that's been said, that we do have the opportunity to change the current scenario locally, and certainly work towards ensuring that we have the right housing, and also that we have a town centre, particularly where these two papers focus on, that we have a town centre that strengthens its civic pride, and is a place where people can enjoy the experience of living in the town centre, have those quiet green spaces to go to, as well as have attractive destinations for people to come to, and certainly the urban greening should help to achieve that, and certainly understanding the tenant demand, hearing from our residents to understand what they want to see within the town centre, to ensure that no one is priced out of owning their own home in their own hometown, should really absolutely be an ambition for us.
Okay, thank you for that. I think absolutely the points raised, I agree with you, and in the context of our local plan, delivering a significant number of homes over the next 20-year period, it's absolutely vital that we get the mix of homes right, and I think this research and policy direction is really helpful to ensure exactly that we deliver the homes that Warrington people need in the right places and of the right quality. So I think this is a very welcome addition, and I thank the Supporting the Local Economy Policy Committee for their work in this area. And thank you, Councillor Parish, if you can convey our comments to the committee at the next meeting, that'd be much appreciated.
Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to see progress on the reports, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Okay then,
Chair.
On that basis, I don't think we need to, do we need to actually vote on this?
Chair, there is a recommendation there.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was just checking in terms of the recommendations. In which case then, colleagues, we'll have to take a vote on this item. I'll go through everybody alphabetically, and if you can indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. So,
Chair, would you seek somebody to move and second before that?
Oh, that'd be a good point, wouldn't it? Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that we've got the solicitor of the council here. I'm not just making it up as I go along. Okay, have we got a proposer and a seconder for the report?
Chair, I'm happy to propose both reports with the recommendations as read.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you. I'm glad someone's keeping me on the straight and narrow today. It's been a tough day already. Okay, I'll move to the vote in the way that I described then. So, Councillor Bowden for, Councillor Guthrie
For,
Councillor Higgins
For,
Councillor Jennings
For,
Councillor Knowles,
For,
Councillor McLaughlin,
for,
Councillor Mitchell,
For,
Councillor Mundry,
For.
and Councillor Smith.
For.
Excellent, thank you. We got there in the end. That was unanimous. Okay, thank you, Councillor Parish. Moving on then to item 5, budget monitoring report 2020 to 2021, quarter 2. Councillor Mitchell, please.
thank you, Chair. We're going back to February, which seems like a very long time ago. I presented my budget to full council. We've had a decade of government cuts under the Conservative austerity programme, and have had savage cuts to our budget over that period. So even before COVID hit us, services had been cut to the bone, and any savings that could be made had already been made. To balance the budget, we had to make £14 million of cuts and had to find a further £7 million of new investment income. Then COVID hit us. The government told us to get to work and not to worry about funding. They would pay whatever it takes. To date, we've only received £15.5 million of total costs of £35 million. So we've had to cope with that in year as well. The financial impact of COVID was that the cost of providing care services went up. The cost of caring for children and adults makes up about 80% of our budget. The fees and charges we normally receive for things like car parks went down, and that was about £2 million worth of loss. So as things stand right now, we're looking at an overspend of £26.8 million. But obviously this is a very fluid situation. If we receive the money from government that they're saying we'll get, that overspend reduces to £9.3 million. I'd like to mention our investments. Thanks to the income they provide, we are in a better position than a lot of other councils. They normally provide a net income of at least £20 million per year, and although that's fallen slightly with COVID, it's still a significant income to us. I'd like to thank the small team that works on our investments, using external experts on risk, valuations and the law. Our processes within the council ensure that all potential investments are vetted on a cross-party basis before they ever come to Cabinet. This skilled and totally dedicated investment team have kept the show on the road through some very difficult times. Our reserves position is healthy and prudent, but you can only use reserves once. We will get through this. Local councils have led the way during this crisis and have shown the value of being local and fully immersed in the community. This is where things have worked well. I call upon our local MPs to make the case for local authorities to be properly funded, because local children at risk, adults needing care, and not least our carers, need them to be. The recommendation is at paragraph 13 of the report. I'll move that recommendation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mitchell, and obviously remains a very challenging financial position for the council this year. I'll come to members again in alphabetical order to seek any questions or comments. So, Councillor Guthrie.
Not this time, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Higgins.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Jennings.
Nothing from me, Chair, thanks.
Councillor Knowles.
I don't want to rehearse the issues that we all discussed in the motion that came to the last full council meeting on adult social care, but I can't really pass by the opportunity to shine a light on the fact that social care, both adults and children, is the biggest area of challenge here, and the one that accounts for the largest proportion of the pressure on the budget. And it's all very well having extra income that comes from those investments, and I do not know what we would do if we didn't have that income coming in. But this is going to require something bigger, smarter, and more long term than anything we can do locally. This requires reform at a governmental level. It requires new legislation, and it requires people to face up to the fact that if you want to treat people decently, some of the most vulnerable people in society, children with profound learning difficulties, adults who are vulnerable, don't have capacity, people who really deserve the best treatment, and it can't be skimped on because these are statutory obligations of the council. Something's going to have to be faced up to, and we did do whatever it took because that's morally the right thing to do, and because we have to fulfil those statutory duties. But the money has to come from somewhere, and we've had large amounts of money pumped into things that have turned out to have been rather unwise, like the Eat Out to Help Out. But I think we need to be thinking a little bit more realistically about pumping money into areas of life in this country where people really need and deserve the right sort of care. And it's not only the people who are in receipt of the care, it's the people who are doing the caring, both unpaid and paid, because it's everything is on a bit of a knife edge at the moment, and it needs sorting. I could go on for hours about it, but I won't.
I would quite happily listen to you speaking for hours on the subject, Councillor Knowles, because as always, you're absolutely on the button in terms of highlighting what the issues are. And what we know is disappointing is that the government's answer to funding some of these shortfalls is simply to pass the buck on to local council taxpayers. It is just a sticking plaster, and it's not a very large one at that. You're absolutely right. We need fundamental reform. We need proper assessment of health and social care in the round. And for once, the government stepping up and providing the resources that people need in order to have a valued, dignified and properly supported life, regardless of their circumstances. So absolutely, keep on with the message. Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Yeah, nothing further from me, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Mundry.
Oh yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think to echo what other people have been saying about this issue, but I think the major issue is lack of sustainable government funding for local authorities in general, and been replaced by centralised bidding for bits and pieces of funding for projects, which is very short term and can only give limited solutions to major problems. So, and that's in general for all local authorities. I think we're on an upward battle to try and sustain the quality of life for citizens of Warrington and the whole of the country. And I think the lack of sustainable government funding, not just on this, not to say, but everywhere else, is forcing councils to look at other ways of getting bits of funding in. And I know ours is in the tune of millions of pounds in there, but to meeting the whole needs of what Warrington's needs are, it's not. It can't replace proper, well thought out government funding for a sustainable future for everybody.
No, thank you. Agreed with that. Councillor Smith.
Nothing to add from me, thank you.
Okay then, thank you. I agree absolutely with those comments, and I perhaps naively thought that the COVID crisis, the global pandemic, would perhaps galvanise people into action in terms of recognising it was a chance for a reset in society in terms of those things which are worthwhile and valuable. And I think the opportunity, sadly, is probably going to pass this government by. Councillor Mitchell, you've moved the recommendations. Have we got a seconder for this report?
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knowles, in which case we move to the vote in the usual way. Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie?
4.
Councillor Higgins?
4.
Councillor Jennings?
4.
Councillor Knowles?
4.
Councillor McLaughlin?
4.
Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Councillor Mundry?
4.
And Councillor Smith?
4.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 6 then, we had a late substitution on the agenda, which is probably why I was in a bit of a flap at the start of the meeting. So this is the Q2 Capital Programme Monitoring Report, which was going to be delivered by Councillor Mitchell, who's obviously now declared an interest. So on that basis, it's fallen to me, Chair's prerogative or punishment, I'm not sure which. So in terms of the highlights from the report, a pretty consistent format with what we've seen in the past, and a similar story in terms of a capital programme which pretty much matches our ability to deliver. A high proportion of schemes being delivered in terms of overall expenditure, cost and budget. In terms of key items, section 3.7 shows the major projects by directorate, and obviously some significant parts of our ambitions for the town in terms of delivery of Great Sankey Hub, very near to completion of Beauty and Dalham Hub, for example, and obviously Times Square. In terms of key points to bring out, page 59, Broomfields Leisure Centre, the artificial grass pitch. A significant part of the funding for that was received via the Football Foundation and through their procurement framework, and so we need to recognise as Cabinet and agree to retrospectively engage SIS on that contract to construct that new 3G pitch at Broomfields. In terms of the Investor Save programme, really pleased with the progress that's been made with Incrementum, our housing company. We're now on site at the former Foxwood and Sycamore Lane schools, and those are two really ambitious schemes to deliver just over 160 homes, but of really high quality and very high green credentials in terms of solar power and ground source heat pumps, hopefully energy efficient homes. And it kind of picks up part of the point from item 4 on the agenda around getting the right mix of tenure for the needs of people here in Warrington. And I think the housing company will move forward with other sites that are in the council's ownership, already progressing with 3 other potential sites to deliver much needed homes. A significant part of our green energy direction of travel has been around our solar farms. York Solar Farm has been performing ahead of business plans and ahead of expectations. We've had some slight delays with our Hull solar farm, but that's now transferred into our ownership, and we're progressing with development of battery storage at the Hull site. An important part to bring out for members here is regarding seeking approval of Cabinet to progress with the loans for development costs associated with the Hull battery storage option through the Hull Special Purpose Vehicle Energy Store 4 Limited, and that's covered on page 60. In both cases for York and Hull, those investments are currently funded by council debt to a tune of £65 million. We've had external advice that it's more commercially advantageous for the council to transfer some of that debt, or the majority of that debt, to those 2 solar farm companies. And so at the top of page 61, there's a discussion there about about 70 to 80% of the total debt being moved into those 2 companies, and obviously we want to progress that with the appropriate delegations. We're also now progressing with the Cirencester hybrid solar farm. And the Abundance Finance project did raise the target of £1 million of funding from residents in Warrington, but also more widely in the nation, in order to provide some of that development funding for that project. Birchwood Park is also covered there. There has been some significant investment in Birchwood Park with the new units that have been placed on there. Colleagues may remember around proposals for a multi-storey car park on the site to aid in future development, and the discussion on pages 61 and 62 talks about options there around using some of that funding for other development of the site, particularly where it could attract new tenants, whilst at a time, particularly post-COVID, that the multi-storey car park isn't actually required right at this stage. Obviously, COVID has had a big impact on delivery of the capital programme, and obviously the extent of variation depends on a scheme-to-scheme basis. But I think overall, delivery has continued to be strong, and that's something for us to be pleased with. Changes to the programme set out in section 6 in the table, and you see some variances by directorate there. Key parts for us around noting the variations to the capital programme, and the variances are noted in Appendix 5. There are some proposed new projects which are covered in Appendix 6 of the report, which total just in excess of £2 million. And one of the things we've introduced recently is feasibility projects which get some initial capital funding to help them progress towards capital projects in due course. There's a number of new feasibility projects which are presented in Appendix 7, which again total in excess of £3 million there. Obviously, those need to progress to be capital projects, otherwise the cost of the feasibility work will fall onto the MTFP budget. But we've got a good track record of putting schemes on there which have got strong prospects of being delivered, and then obviously progressing into capital projects in due course. So those are the key points that I wanted to bring out. The recommendation in paragraph 17 is quite long. I won't read it out, but I should have covered every one of those points in the presentation. So obviously noting the report but significantly approving the amendments, noting the retrospective decision regarding Broomfield's 3G pitch, agree the new schemes, approve the council giving loans regarding the battery storage option, but also the transfer of debt associated with York and Hull solar farms to those companies. So that's covered in 5, 6 and 7, and then obviously approve the Director of Law and Governance Monitoring to carry out the necessary legals associated with those decisions. And finally, there's the item in section 11 regarding the relocation of the bus depot. There's a £170,000 there included request for additional feasibility work associated with that project. And obviously, the bus depot is really key for our ambitions for redeveloping the Southern Gateway, but also about giving our bus company, a state-of-the-art modern facility, which hopefully can support green infrastructure, electric buses, and redevelop, a part of the town centre at the same time. It's a significant project for us, which has already attracted funding from various sources, and it's quite clearly important. So I've moved those recommendations in 17, and I'll move on to questions. So, Councillor Guthrie.
Councillor Guthrie's left. She made a declaration of interest.
Oh, she did on this item. Sorry, you're right. I was thinking it was the other item. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. In which case, while you're on, have you got any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you. 2 points I'd like to raise. One, I'd like to place on record, you have touched on these, but I'd like to place on record my support and anticipation, excitement to the Bucey and Dalham hub. The vital service that will play to that local community, and also to help deliver much of the recommendations from the Central 6 Master Plan. That is vital to deliver those recommendations. And all Councillor Jennings and his colleagues have been main drivers around the Bucey and Dalham hub. So I think we're all very excited when it eventually opens later this month. But unfortunately, with the COVID situation, I don't think we will be able to get on with the things we all want to get on with as quickly as we wanted to. The other second item I wanted to touch on was the Broomfield's Leisure Centre. Now, this, as you remember, is part of the playing pitch strategy I delivered last year, and I think this gives further evidence of our commitment and our pledge to bring more 3G pitches to support all season and all weather sporting activities across the town. Now, it's really important that this investment, that we all understand that this investment is directly being driven by a Labour pledge to improve all our sporting venues, even against a backdrop of lack of financial support from this government. This is a pledge from a Labour council to deliver valuable and secure sporting venues, in particular the 3G pitches. So I'm really excited that not only Broomfield's been successful in this through the partnership, and all our 3G pitches and development hinges on partnership, so it's really vital. So yes, I'm very pleased with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those positive comments. You may have stolen Councillor Jennings' thunder, but I'll bring Councillor Jennings in now.
I think he's gone.
Sorry.
Oh.
Chair, I may have temporarily stepped out for the wrong agenda item then. Is this the one with which it results to obviously the bus board declaration?
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah. No, sorry, I just wanted to check, so I will step back out.
Right, okay. Apologies there, colleagues. My fault. Councillor Knowles.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just echoing what Councillor Higgins has said about some of the projects we have with our hubs. They mentioned the Great Sankey Hub as well, and how important they are for our public health and wellbeing agenda. But also, again, really important for well-being is the housing that we're delivering. And it's really good to be a council delivering housing. So I'm very excited about that that news about Incrementum and getting those houses going and getting them ready to deliver to people who need a home and who are looking for a good quality home. So that's a good story for me too. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Mundry.
Yes, I think excellent news. I think it's another example of our council delivering for the needs of the people of Warrington, really doing a good job for people. And in these difficult times, it's amazing that we're still managing to deliver as much as we do.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick out one of the proposed new bids for adding to the capital programme, which is No Wrong Door. Cabinet colleagues will be aware of No Wrong Door already as the innovative approach to supporting children and families on the edge of care. And the evidence from North Yorkshire, who pioneered the approach, suggests we'll see a significant decrease in the number of children in care, and especially in expensive residential care placements. I thought I'd just take the opportunity to give people a quick update on it. We are about 1 month behind where we plan to be with this, which is not bad considering everything that's been going on nationally. And the delay was all down to the DFE board, but they have now agreed their part of the funding, and that has been signed off. We've just completed an extensive consultation with the staff. That's done, and recruitment is now underway. So we should be looking to launch No Wrong Door in April of next year. And ultimately, what we should see from it is not only a good size reduction in the number of children in care, but we're delivering better outcomes for all those children, young people and families. And it will also deliver significant savings, well above the amount of money we've been asked to add to the capital programme in the proposed new bid. Thank you.
No, thank you for that comment, and thank you for the reminder about the excellent project that we've got underway there with No Wrong Door. I think you're absolutely right in terms of outcomes. That's what we are focused on, ensuring good outcomes for the people of Warrington, and the fact that we're able to do it with an innovative project like this, which actually saves money, but most importantly has a big impact in particularly for young people at the edge of care, and preventing them going into care is really, really important. Okay, I think everybody's had a go with comments and questions. Have we got a seconder for the report?
Happy to second.
Okay, Councillor Higgins, thank you. In which case, move to the vote then. So Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Higgins,
4.
Councillor Knowles,
4.
Councillor McLaughlin,
4.
Councillor Mundry,
4.
and Councillor Smith.
4.
Thank you, colleagues. We got there, even though I forgot about the 3 abstentions partway through. Wonderful. Okay, moving on to, well, we'll have to wait. Can we get the 3 councillors back into the meeting, please?
I've sent them a message, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is Councillor Guthrie back with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful. Okay. It's difficult doing this online, isn't it? Virtual meetings, know whether people are in or out. So there we go. In which case, because you're back, Councillor Guthrie, we'll move on to you then with item 7, Statement of Community Involvement. An update from you, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks Cabinet's approval for revisions to the Council's Statement of Community Involvement. It's simply to bring it up to date so it helps our communities get involved, whether it's the local plan or planning applications. We need to just get it on the right footing. It's a statutory requirement under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 for the Council to prepare a Statement of Community Involvement. Once adopted, the Council is required to comply with the principles and commitments made in the Statement of Community Involvement. It should, however, be noted that the Council, if it so chooses to do so, Whatever in the written document, it can go above the minimum consultation requirements set out in the Statement of Community Involvement. The council first published its statement in 2006, and it was last updated in 2014. So it's really relevant that we look at it again, bearing in mind our local plan for next year. The proposed revisions to the consultation on the planning documents, we need to do updates to reflect changes to legislation and government policy. There's lots of different policies changed since the last document. The government has also published an updated version of its national planning policy framework and updated its supporting planning practice guidance. So we need to be cognizant of that. We need to align approval of the planning policy documents with the council's constitution to have it embedded into our the way we do things. We also need to look at how we engage in the preliminary stages of plan making. So this document will not sort of hinder any sort of people getting involved with consultation from the beginning, and it plans to actually do more by actually putting relevant documents on our website so people can view them sort of beforehand. We wanted to change the notification of how we consult on the local plan. If I can remind members, we had over 5,000 residents, groups and organisations and other stakeholders on its local plan consultation, and I went to every one of the consultations that we had and just was taken aback with the amount of people that actually wanted to be informed. They've obviously made representations about the local plan, but if it has to be kept up to date, this has given us a real database of people that want to be informed. So we need to use more modern means of communication rather than having stand-up meetings with people. We need to do it in a completely different way, using both the council's website and local media, and also our database that we've built up. Given the wide range of communication options that are now available, together with resource implications, the council is no longer committing to sending out notification letters because we've got other means of contacting people, including sort of undertaking consultation on the local plan. But it's still, if we decide to do something different, we can still do that. Changes to when we will consult. A revision is being included to confirm that the council may undertake additional consultation at the earlier regular 18 stage prior to proceeding to a more formal regulation 19 stage, where the update to the local plan is likely to raise significant community interest. And this revision is being made following the level of response to the recent local plan consultations and reaffirms the council's commitment to engage with the local community and key stakeholders. We had a lot of stakeholders involved with that, not just individual residents, but parish councils as well. And we wanted to make sure that everybody has the ability to be consulted. We need to make changes on how we will consult. And taking into account feedback from the recent local plan consultation, a revision has been made to make specific reference to the use of public exhibitions held in accessible locations to provide a focus for consultation. And the revision confirms that such exhibitions will provide explanatory displays of the document being consulted on, with officers being made available in person to provide more detailed information to respond to any questions. And this actually came out in the local plan consultations. Residents were really interested in the details behind the documents. So it proved a really sort of valuable resource. In terms of neighbourhood planning, we've got several parish councils who've been involved in neighbourhood planning areas, and in line with the national legislation and guidance, revisions have also been made to set out the support that the council will provide to parish councils and neighbourhood forums in preparing and undertaking consultation on neighbourhood plans. We're also looking at revisions to consultation on planning applications, and it's intended to revise the wording of the supplementary planning document to simplify the requirements for planning applications to illustrate the minimum amount of publicity that they will undertake in accordance with statutory requirements. This will ensure that there's clarity in the publicity process that reflects national requirements. And we've seen quite a lot of big planning applications recently whereby this has happened. The recent restrictions in movement introduced by the government in response to COVID-19 demonstrates the potential implications of committing to publicity over and above the statutory levels. For a period of time, it was considered unreasonable to erect site notices when there was a significant restrictions in movement, and particular applications couldn't move forward for determination without this being undertaken, and it proved really difficult to do that. But by reflecting national requirements, it would ensure that the impacts of any such restrictions in the future are limited to those applications where it is absolutely necessary. Moving on to the risk assessment, it's important that the council is able to consult on all elements of planning in Warrington in the most effective way. And just to sum up, the document provides a comprehensive basis to ensure effective consultation on all aspects of planning in Warrington. And there's a large appendix that I'm sure you've all read, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And the recommendation is the Cabinet is recommended to approve the revisions to the Council Statement of Community Involvement. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Guthrie. Come to members for any comments or questions then. So, Councillor Higgins, please.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Jennings.
Just a quick comment to say that, this is a real opportunity for us to communicate with our residents on a channel of their choice, and so we're absolutely firmly behind it.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Knowles.
So important to listen to people and to maximise those opportunities for people to contribute their thoughts, and really welcome the reflection that's gone into trying to do that effectively.
Thank you for that. Councillor McLaughlin.
Nothing from me, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mitchell.
Nothing for me, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mundry.
Nothing for me, thanks, Chair.
And Councillor Smith.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. No, I agree absolutely in terms of engagement and consultation. We don't pay lip service to consultation. We do it because it's not just because it's a requirement, but because we do generally want to hear what the people of Warrington have got to say, and we enter into it in an honest and open way. So totally agree with those comments. So Councillor Guthrie has moved this paper and the recommendations therein. Have we got a second of the report?
Happy to second.
Okay, Councillor Knowles, thank you. Move to the vote. Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie.
4.
Councillor Higgins.
4.
Councillor Jennings.
4.
Councillor Knowles.
4.
Councillor McLaughlin.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Mundry.
4.
And Councillor Smith. Okay, thank you, colleagues. That's unanimous as well. Moving on to agenda item 8, which is performance report at Q2. This would normally be the report of Councillor Patel, but unfortunately he's had to give his apologies tonight, so I will pick this item up. In terms of the performance report, it basically covers our performance against the key indicators that support our strategy as a council, and our corporate strategy has those 4 key pledges regarding our residents living healthy, happy and independent lives, that everybody benefits from our thriving economy, that we have safe, strong communities that protect our most vulnerable, and that we have a town which is clean, green and vibrant. Appendix 1 sets out the Council's performance scorecard, and there's a lot of detailed commentary in there, and obviously members can observe trends on any of the KPIs that we have as a council. In terms of the report in the text, again, there's a lot of detail, particularly in section 3.4, and so it'd be unreasonable for me to cover it all. Really just want to pick out some key parts for me. And the first, of course, is recognising the impact that COVID has had on the council. Kind of some diversion away from elements of our day job. But ultimately, the council has remained committed and working hard to support residents, businesses and communities that are impacted by COVID. And it's been really important that we do that in conjunction with our key partners, that we continue to monitor the situation and respond and implement the necessary steps as required. And I think, you know, our decision to discuss with the government moving into Tier 3 back in October, you know, is an illustration of that. It's the council responding to the evidence that it has and taking the necessary and brave steps really to take the appropriate action in the interests of protecting Warrington residents and ultimately potentially saving lives. So that was a really key part in terms of keeping people healthy, safe and well, as in page 178. A couple of new things I wanted to pick out. Page 180, the Rapid Community Response Service, which has got up and running this year during the time of COVID. It has been successfully launched and is operational. And I think that's a really important illustration, really, of what we can do by having a multidisciplinary health and social care team which works closely with primary care, community services and the North West Ambulance Service. And that's about, you know, maintaining people's ability to stay in their own home, but also to transition between different elements of care. And what it's trying to do is really prevent admission, you know, acute hospital admissions or emergency respite care, but be more responsive to the needs of vulnerable people in the town. One of the things that obviously COVID has shown us, you know, the impact on traffic, reduction here in the town, but also the uptake around cycling and walking, for example, and things such as the first and last mile, but also our investment in strategic cycle routes and the network here in Warrington, you know, is really going to pay off. And we're going to see a couple of those schemes in the agenda later. For example, investment in the Transpennine Trail between Chester Road and Knutsford Road. Just again, investment from this council using bid monies, but also capital investment from the council itself in order to genuinely drive change in the infrastructure here in the town. Other aspects that I wanted to pick out, you know, the public health emergency that we faced, you know, has inevitably directed a lot of resources directly to COVID. And what we do know, as drawn out in page 182, is how some services were suspended or scaled back significantly over particularly the early part of the COVID crisis. And areas such as cancer screening, for example, and immunisation programmes. We really do need to tackle that backlog in order to ensure that the overall general health of people here in Warrington is properly supported and prioritised. In 3.5, page 183, wanted to bring out about Warrington Market. You know, we made a significant investment in Times Square and the market, and I think, you know, it's testament to the market management and also the traders that they've continued to perform strongly, you know, over the last few months. It's been a difficult time. It's a difficult time to open the market, but there's been a lot of creativity and innovation there. And what it's ensured, of course, is there's still a lot of activity around Times Square. and that's really important in terms of moving on and filling the rest of the units. I think, you know, even in challenging times, you know, there's still a lot of interest in Times Square and our scheme, you know, here in Warrington. There's discussion on page 184 regarding the town deal. There was a bid for over £26 million of government funding for 7 projects. Whilst we're obviously pleased to see some funding now being received in that first tranche of town deals money, it's disappointing that we received less than we'd asked for, £22.1 million from that. At the moment, we're progressing with those 7 projects, and we're obviously reviewing those and how they can be delivered with the budget that's being made available. But, you know, it's not just about bricks and concrete. You know, some really important projects in the town deal, which recognise some of the fabric that we need for Warrington, for example, in terms of the care sector, having, you know, appropriate facilities for training and career development of people in the care sector and supporting people here in Warrington. I think those were the main things that I wanted to bring out. Oh, sorry, I missed one, which was around waste management. One of the things we've seen in terms of some of our KPIs is the impact of COVID and more people being at home and not in the workplace regarding the amount of waste that the council's having to collect and deal with, and obviously the proportion that's been recycled or sent to landfill. So we've got a kind of a disappointing decline in recycling that obviously we'll hope to focus on as we come out of this crisis, and remind residents of Warrington about the importance of recycling, and not just in terms of the green agenda, but obviously the impact it has for us as a council financially. So those are the things that I wanted to bring out from the report. This report is only for noting in terms of our current performance position, but obviously also recognising that all of us on the cabinet you know, have a role to play in liaising with our senior officers and directors on specific aspects of performance. So the recommendations are set out in paragraph 9. I'll move those. I'm obviously happy to answer any questions. So I'll come to Councillor Guthrie first.
Yes, just talking about our ensuring our town is clean, green and vibrant, and in terms of clean streets and public spaces, one of the things that we've done all the way through COVID is made sure we've cleaned up hotspots of fly tipping, and our staff have gone out sort of quite patiently and removed sort of lots of this. And that's an eye opener really for residents who still fly tip, but we've now during this period our enforcement has now sort of made inroads into successful prosecutions, and we've had sort of several really that have gone to court. And this is just a warning really for residents that fly tipping just won't be acceptable, because our priority is obviously making our town as clean and green as possible, and we won't tolerate such things in public places. Thank you.
No, thank you for those comments. Wholeheartedly agree with those. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Councillor Borden. Well, firstly, thank you to Councillor Guthrie for her fight and drive against fly tippers. It's much appreciated. As you know, in my own ward, Fairfield and Howley, we do have our fair share of fly tipping. So again, thank you to Judith and the team who go out and regularly remove fly tipped items, certainly from the back alleys of some of the areas of my ward. It's much appreciated. I'd like to bring to attention to colleagues, it's just to the item on page 185 and the 3.6 under communities are safe, about the empowerment and resilience of communities and independent communities. And I just want to bring to Cabinet my support to the volunteer groups, to which there are many, especially around our parks and green spaces. Now, our volunteer groups are often supported by council and council officers with council time, giving them support, and often they're all supported by community initiative funds to give them small grants to continue their good work, whether that's buying equipment or to put on fun days for the local residents. Now, I'm also immensely proud that by supporting residents, we're also developing the friends groups. It gives them a sense of ownership and responsibility for their own community, and this gives them a real sense of ownership to their town. Now, we all know what it's like to be volunteers. Volunteers are the backbone of a good town, and I'm really proud of the volunteers we have in Warrington, because without those volunteers and those friends groups of parks and green spaces, then I think our town would be much poorer. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Higgins. Moving on to Councillor Jennings then, please.
No comments from me, Chair, thanks.
Councillor Knowles.
I think Councillor Higgins has mentioned that word proud. I think actually there's a lot to be proud of, and it's because I think our values as a council are being enacted and worked upon for future delivery in every aspect of this report. Even though we've all been in the midst of COVID and it's been about kind of crisis management and firefighting, there are some really big long-term projects that you have to have vision for, whether that's transformation of services for vulnerable people that you referred to, you know, the rapid response work where we've attracted in support to be an accelerator site. So, you know, we're an early adopter of that whole approach. The whole transformation work that's going on around intermediate care, where we're working with health partners on that. Those are really exciting ones from sort of my bit of the council. Again, stuff that people don't really see, but is hugely important to do with safeguarding. A lot of extra work has been done in that kind of area because of people being a bit more hidden away through COVID and people being in peril of falling through cracks and so on. And again, if you want a town where people don't get left behind and people don't get missed, you have to have strong a strong wish and a very joined up system for keeping people safe. So lots and lots of positives in there, and a real credit to the officers who are working on these programmes as well to make sure that they continue to progress in the midst of everything else that's been going on. So in some ways, you could say a performance report. It's a bit of a look backwards, but actually I think we should do it the other way around and see it as the starting point for looking forwards and seeing what's already embedded and ready to move on. So great.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from all those comments, and I was really pleased that you picked up a little bit on some of the public health work. And I wanted to use this opportunity to say, you know, public health, maybe this time last year, might have been seen as a bit soft, you know, a kind of soft approach in the council, doing preventative work to enable people to live healthier lives. And whether that's with alcohol issues, or whether it's to do with bringing down our rates of smoking, whether it's to do with screening for cancer and other issues. You know, the public health team have always worked on all of these areas and more. And yet this year, suddenly public health has been massively in the spotlight and had to do immense amounts of work and continuing to do immense amounts of work. But we're still keeping those things going. We're still keeping on with those important preventative aspects of the public health provision, and so it's an opportunity for me really to thank everyone in the public health team for all the work that they're doing, because I think we all recognise what a difficult time it's been, but how important it is still to focus on prevention, and also just to pick up on the Safe and Well service and how well we were able to put that together using the wellbeing service. And you know, we already had the strands in place for that service, and we were able to adapt it and mould it to fit in with the new COVID reality. So that's all the fantastic work of the wellbeing team, of the public health team, and others. And it's just a thank you to public health for all that work, really.
Thank you. I think that was a good, timely, intervention really on behalf of council officers. Particularly in the public health sector areas you've said, but I'd extend that really to all officers across the council. For their fortitude and application over the last 8-9 months, because it's been a tough journey, wherever you work in the council. But I think you're right to pick out our public health colleagues in relation to this report. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Nothing for me, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Mundry.
I'm just happy to not the report, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
No comment, thank you.
Okay, fine, thank you, colleagues. So I've moved the recommendation in section 9. Have I got a seconder for this report?
I'll second it, Russ.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guthrie. In which case I take to the vote. Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie.
4.
Councillor Higgins.
4.
Councillor Jennings.
4.
Councillor Knowles.
4.
Councillor McLaughlin.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Mundry.
4.
And Councillor Smith.
4.
Okay, thank you, that's unanimous. Moving on then to agenda item 9, strategic risk environment, quarter 2. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thanks, Chair. So this is a routine report looking at the risks faced by the council and also its insurance position. The council faces risks in many different ways. As an employer, as an owner and occupier of property, as a highways authority, and as a provider of public services. It's really important that any risks that face the council are properly assessed and that there are appropriate oversight of them. Once risks are identified, measures can be put in place to manage that risk and they can be kept under review. We have a strategic risk register, that's a list of risks, and on that list are risks that, even when control measures are in place, are still over a certain level. Other risks go onto the register because of the potential financial or reputational risks that they present. So you'll see figure 1 in the report, and that shows the risks that are set out in the register ranked by the size of the risk. And figure 2 in the report shows the number of risks on the register by score. At paragraph 4.3 in the report, you'll see set out the most significant risks facing the council at the present time. And I'll highlight a couple of those because we've already spoken about the council's difficult financial position. So there are significant challenges around addressing homelessness. The Homelessness Reduction Act placed further financial challenges on councils whilst budgets were being cut. The government provided extra money for everyone in and move on initiatives which were linked to the pandemic, but that's really a sticking plaster. It doesn't address the underlying lack of funding and resources in that service. Strategic risk number 24 looks at the risks associating with managing the strategic investment portfolio that we have. When decisions are made, there is input from experts both inside and outside the council, and councillors from all parties get to scrutinise investments before they reach the cabinet. That's the Treasury Management Committee, and we also have risk workshops when there's a big investment that we're looking at, which includes everyone. However, it is important to get governance right. So we've recently had an external review done by PwC, and the council's now implementing the recommendations of this review. So I'll turn now to insurance activity. For the first 6 months of the year, we had a sharp increase in school travel related claims, and that was mainly where trips were cancelled and the operator didn't offer a refund. The caseload's been quite consistent, but there are a small number of high value claims valued at £25,000 or more. They're only about 15% of the total number of the claims, but they make up about 70% of the whole value of the caseload. And on those cases, it's really important to have input from specialist advisors. In terms of new and emerging issues, we've obviously got the economic impact of both COVID and Brexit, and the really big concerns are relating to potential job losses, increasing inequality and deprivation in the town, which in turn will increase demand on housing, benefits and social care services, all at the same time as income from council tax, business rates and fees and charges could be reduced, and that's what's really on the horizon. I'll move the recommendation, which is at paragraph 11 of the report, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Mitchell. I'll come to Councillor Guthrie first.
Not at this time, thank you.
Councillor Higgins.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Jennings.
Nothing from me, Chair, thanks.
Councillor Knowles.
Nor me, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
Nothing from me, thank you.
And Councillor Smith.
I'll hear me then. Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. In which case we've had the report moved. Have I got a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, Councillor Smith has seconded then. So moving to the vote, Councillor Bowden 4, Councillor Guthrie
4,
Councillor Higgins
4,
Councillor Jennings
4,
Councillor Knowles
4,
Councillor McLaughlin
4,
Councillor Mitchell
4.
Councillor Mundry
4.
and Councillor Smith.
4.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. That's unanimous. On to agenda item 10, fee rates 2020/21 for residential and nursing framework, mid-year review. Councillor Knowles, please.
thank you. This was obviously, it's a mid-year review. A report came to Cabinet in March of 2020, setting out the proposals, but it's everything has changed in the universe really since March in relation to the impact of COVID on things, and not least on care provision within Warrington. So the report seeks authority to confirm adjusted fees for the residential and nursing care rates on our framework from the 12th of October rather than from April of next year. So if colleagues will remember back to the report from last March, there was a proposal for a fee increase from April and then one for the following April. But as I say, times have changed. In Warrington, we must meet the Care Act requirements, which, amongst other duties, we need to manage the market, and we need to ensure also that there are sustainable, local and a range of good quality provision in place here to meet the needs of a diverse range of residents. And what has happened over the last few months is that the impact of COVID has meant that things have changed really remarkably. There's been a huge negative impact. Occupancy rates have fallen quite significantly, as you'll see in 4.2, and in some homes occupancy rates have sadly fallen to as low as 60%. So market analysis has been done, and in order to break it even, most homes need to consistently achieve 90%. We've had some provision in the interim to try and support homes with low occupancy, because it's really important to manage the market and make sure that there is that choice available. So you can see in the chart the impact of what's been happening in Warrington. And it's really not sustainable in the longer term, but a very careful eye is being kept on things at the moment to manage the risk of provider failure, and ensure also it's very important to ensure that quality is maintained, particularly in a context where CQC inspections aren't going ahead. And we have had one targeted inspection of a home that's had an inadequate rating and is closing. So top-ups have become more prevalent in the sector year on year, and particularly at the moment, because as care homes strive to balance their books, they need to add the top-ups on in order to have sufficient income, and that leaves us with a risk where there may well not be sufficient choice of homes that don't have a top-up. We need to make sure there's a range of price points for people going into residential care. So the prevalence has shifted upwards from about 50% of beds now to over 60%, and that's a trend that is likely to continue. The other thing that's impacted heavily is the impact of inflation and the national living wage. And again, you'll see in 4.9, the cost rise in 2021 is predicted to be something getting on for 7%, almost 7%. So without sort of going through the very, very fine detail of it, there has been benchmarking done. Our fee rates are sort of in a sensible position in relation to other authorities in the region. Turning now to the financial considerations, we've spent 21.6 million on residential and nursing care providers in Borough. That just goes back to the earlier point about the significant part of the budget that is applied to social care. At this time, residential and nursing providers are paid on a standard basis, although sometimes there do have to be individual placements at higher than standard rates. That's perhaps where somebody's run out of the ability to pay a top-up, but it's not in their best interest to be moved because, after all, their care home is their home. The expected costs for 2021 are in some ways lower than previously forecast because we have very, very sadly had excess deaths in the older population who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID in terms of mortality. We've also got people who have been discharged under NHS funding who will eventually sort of transfer over onto social care funded places. And the prediction is that there will be a further 1.2 million required for the period from September through to next March. The proposal in the report really is that we meet the rising base costs of the providers by bringing forward the fee increase, because they really do need the money now to stabilise things rather than next April. In itself, that wouldn't need to come to Cabinet, but we do have this provision to bring it back. It wouldn't need to come to Cabinet from a sort of financial point of view, but we do need to bring it back because there is a significant change in what we're suggesting that is done. So it's a suggestion that there is an early inflation uplift, and that we cover things that way. I'll move on swiftly, really, to the risks. The risks, if we don't do this, are that providers may just simply opt out of the market and consider not contracting with the council, or that they would move on to single purchase arrangements that would result in them being at a higher rate. Or, and this is the one that has impact on the individuals, is that they pass the increases in costs onto the current or new residents by adding or increasing their top-up fees. And equally, if too many providers drop out of the market, we won't be able to meet our statutory duty to meet need. We've done a good analysis, and it's really important that obviously there's a further review next April, but in the meantime, the proposals are that we take account of the effect of the pandemic and we bring in the increases from October of this year, and that there's an uplift of 2.5% from the 12th of October to account for the pressures that our providers have experienced. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Councillor Knowles, on what's obviously a very detailed and complex topic area. So I appreciate your presentation. Councillor Guthrie, any questions?
Just to comment, really, I welcome this report because it really goes into the detail around sort of nursing care provision, and I think what Councillor Knowles has highlighted is we need to maintain those quality standards. It's quite paramount to all our residents that the quality of care is maintained. And care work can be difficult at the best of times, so we do need to protect them. So yes, I am in fully agreement with the report, and thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you for that. Councillor Higgins?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Jennings?
Nothing from me, Chair, thanks.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Nothing from me, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mitchell?
Nothing from me, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mundry?
No comments from me, Chair.
Councillor Smith?
Nothing from me either, thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. I think my, to sort of close out, I think my observation is obviously about the need to maintain the market there for the council, and I think I did appreciate the discussion regarding the risks, because obviously what we have to do is ensure that we can meet our statutory duty to meet the need of residents, and that's why it's important that we've got a viable care system here in Warrington. It is quite a considered report, and I appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this paper and getting it here to Cabinet tonight. So it's been moved by Councillor Knowles. Have we got a seconder for this report?
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay, it was seconded by Councillor Guthrie. If we move to the vote, Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie,
4.
Councillor Higgins,
4.
Councillor Jennings,
4.
Councillor Knowles,
4.
Councillor McLaughlin,
4.
Councillor Mitchell,
4.
Councillor Mundry,
4.
and Councillor Smith.
4.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Agenda item 11, COVID-19 procurement arrangements. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. The background to this is when COVID hit, the government relaxed the rules for council in obtaining services, removing the need to tender. And this is because it was difficult for companies to fulfil those requirements, and also because urgent decisions were having to be made. And this report's basically in the Cabinet pack to consider at each Cabinet meeting what decisions have been made under these provisions, and it's done for transparency more than anything. I don't have anything to report this month, so I'm not expecting many questions, but the recommendation to note the report is at paragraph 12, and I'll move that recommendation, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mitchell. And it's amazing, isn't it? Transparency around procurement arrangements by local government. If only we could get the same from the national government in relation to COVID. I'll come to Councillor Guthrie. Any comments or questions?
No comments at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Higgins?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Jennings?
Likewise, nothing from me, Chair.
Councillor Knowles?
No, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mundry?
No comment from me, Chair.
And Councillor Smith?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Mitchell. Have we got a seconder for the report?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Okay, that's Councillor McLaughlin, thank you. Moving on to the vote then, Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie?
4.
Councillor Higgins?
4.
Councillor Jennings?
4.
Councillor Knowles?
4.
Councillor McLaughlin?
4.
Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Councillor Mundry?
4.
And Councillor Smith?
4.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. That's unanimous. Agenda item 12, Transpennine Trail update and award of construction contracts. Councillor Mundry, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to be able to fetch this report to the committee. I think it's the Transpennine Trail upgrade. It's an upgrade of central section of the Transpennine Trail, which runs alongside Manchester Ship Canal between Knutsford Road and Willisville Causeway. The project is one of 3 large sustainable transport travel projects giving financial support. Sorry about that, Chair. It was we had another meeting going on in the other room from the Central 6, which was interfering with me hearing. Yeah, it's supported by the Cheshire and Warrington Local Enterprise Partnership. The other two projects are Chester Road Cycle and Omega to Burton Wood Accessible Improvement Scheme. The latter scheme is currently under construction. I think I'll just pause for this second because we can quite quickly go on from scheme to scheme to scheme without pausing to say is how they come about. And it's actually from the Warrington's Transport Plan 4, which we implemented last year. And it says we was ambitious with the Transport Plan 4. We was ambitious, but by being ambitious, you achieve more. And I think with the ambition of the plan and from Warrington and the political leadership, we are achieving our plan piece by piece. I think it's important to make that point. If we don't have the ambition in the first place, we don't achieve. And this is just one of a number of schemes that we've achieved on and actually implementing our transport plan, which complements everything we're trying to do for the people of Warrington. This scheme complements our, as I say, Transport Plan 4 and sections relating to active travel, the part of the Transport Plan 4 it fits into. The scheme also is a key greenway link to the Warrington local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, which we've also implemented at the same time. The aims are to provide people with choice about how they travel for each journey, encourage healthier lifestyles by increasing the active travel opportunities for people of Warrington, improve safety for all highway users and develop a resilient and efficient transport network that supports the town's growth. So it's implementing a safer way of travelling, but also increasing the growth of the town. This is part of our plan to join up where we can all the cycle and walking routes across the town. This piece puts Latchford Village and Stockton East Town Centre, the Environment Agency offices on Wash Lane and Burton Wood Business Park and Causeway, so it links them areas up, which is quite important to us. The scheme is 1.6 kilometres long and it has a time-lapse path which runs across the existing path. The improved service would benefit all users, but particularly those who use wheelchairs and mobility scooters, thus allowing the council to meet its duties under the Equality Act. Currently, this pathway is virtually impossible for such users. There will also be a new Toucan crossing at Knutsford Road to benefit pedestrians and cyclists, an aid access path leading to Thelwall Lane and beyond. This will be delivered through a separate contract to the main works. The scheme was designed to share facilities, and this is similar to the status of other greenways in Warrington, such as Sankey Valley Network Paths and the Westbrook Dalham Greenway. The shared status will be promoted by the use of appropriate signing and markings along the path, in addition users to make aware that need to share space accordance. This is quite important because when cyclists are on the roads, they're vulnerable to car users and motor vehicle users. But when the cyclists are on these joint use paths, pedestrians are the vulnerable people on here, and they're vulnerable to cyclists. So it's a question of saying is, your cyclists are vulnerable on roads, but pedestrians are vulnerable for cyclists on these joint pathways. So it's important to actually keep a careful eye out for pedestrians while using these paths, because they are joint use paths. The code of conduct is contained in a cycle map which we sent out to all residents recently, in a cycle map we sent out there, which cost round about 20p per map and went out to people, and it came out of the actual travel fund. So it's an important piece of work we've been doing, joining up all the work we're doing for the Transport 4, but particularly on active travel and giving people to have a choice of travelling, particularly for walking and cycling, and a healthy way of travelling. The scheme is in excess of £700,000, but this is where our reputation of being ambitious and delivering our ambitions comes into it. The Cheshire and Warrington Local Growth Fund are stumping up £550,000 towards the cost, leaving a capital borrowing to borrow up to £200,000 to meet the rest of the cost. So a lot of this work's being done with external funding. And with that, Chair, I'll take some questions, but I'll also move the recommendations in 11.1.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mundry. And I agree with you in terms of the track record the council's got. It's the fact that we design viable schemes and deliver them that means we continue to attract funding, whether it be from Cheshire and Warrington Local Enterprise Partnership or whether it's from Department for Transport or other bodies. So, definitely congratulations to yourself and the officers for the work that goes into bringing forward schemes such as this. Any comments or questions, members? Councillor Guthrie?
Not at this time, thank you.
Councillor Higgins?
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Jennings?
None from me, thanks.
Councillor Knowles?
It would be remiss of me not to say something when Councillor Warburton is my colleague and he's so passionate about active travel. But I do recall some members of the opposition saying that the LTP4 was all about motherhood and apple pie, and it was all about aspirations. And actually, it's the opposite. It's about having projects that have been planned for really carefully and are now being delivered. And as Councillor Mundry says, it's about being ambitious and about realising the ambitions. So this is great for people getting about, and I think a focus has really been shone on getting about using active means over this year when people have been out walking and cycling so much more with COVID. But there's a real public health benefit to this in terms of people's well-being. There's a lot of enjoyment to be had from being able to get out on your bike or out for a walk or out for a run. And there's been mischief about particularly the Transpennine Trail being, turned into a road, but actually it's being invested in and it's going to be used for the purpose that it always was going to be used for. So it's really, really good to see, and it's nice to see those ambitions being turned into reality.
Thank you for that. Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the councillor for one of the wards affected, it's really good to see this project progressing, and particularly when Councillor Mundry mentioned that this will also support people with mobility scooters and wheelchairs. I know my residents in Latchford West really enjoy the possibilities that they have for travelling on some of the footpaths we have and for using cycle paths and so on. And they've demonstrated that in different ways over the last few years. So it's really good here to have this new scheme coming forward that will benefit them as well as residents in Latchford East and further afield, and allow them to make choices whether they're just using that path for leisure or whether they need to get somewhere to work or to the shops, or if they're caring for someone locally but a little bit further away than they would normally walk, and they can take use a bike that way. So really good news story, and thanks to the officers for the work they've done in getting this to this stage.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Mitchell?
Yes, please, Chair. I'd like to mention the Amiga scheme, if I may, the cycleway from Burtonwood to Amiga. I really welcome this investment by the council. It's transformational for Burtonwood. This is a road that previously you couldn't connect to Warrington safely unless you had a car because there isn't a bus service. There wasn't pavement. So now walkers and cyclists can get from the village safely, not just to Warrington, but also access to employment opportunities on Amiga. So previously, if you didn't have a car, there was no real safe way of getting to Amiga for those jobs. So absolutely welcome this investment. It's a really positive thing on the part of the council. And I'd just like to thank all the officers and hands for making this happen.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you colleagues for those really positive comments on this report. I think we're all really pleased to see this come forward as a great illustration of what we're delivering as an administration. Councillor Mundry has moved the recommendations. Have we got a seconder for this report?
I'm happy to second.
I'll second. Oh.
I think that was Councillor Mitchell, so we'll let Councillor Mitchell second tonight. Okay, moving on to the vote then. Councillor Bowden, 4. Councillor Guthrie?
4.
Councillor Higgins?
4.
Councillor Jennings?
4.
Councillor Knowles?
4.
Councillor McLaughlin?
4.
Councillor Mitchell?
4.
Councillor Mundry?
4.
And Councillor Smith?
4.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. That's unanimous. That brings us to the end of the part 1 agenda for tonight's meeting. That's the point at which this public broadcast will end. So to anybody who's been watching our meeting tonight, thank you and good night.